So everyone, you're all very welcome to today's edition of AFS Live. AFS stands for Alliance for Science Live, where we meet every Thursday to talk about anything science, agriculture, biotechnology, policy. And today we are excited and honored to have one of our very important partners on the African continent, AATF. That will tell us what AATF stands for. And this afternoon, we are going to talk about what influences technology adoption in Africa. Technology today is going to refer to agricultural technology, new seed varieties, new agronomic practices. Is Africa slow? Are we fast adopters? I will not preempt Nancy. That is going to be our discussion for the day. But at the end of the day, we want to go away with a learning point. If we are slow, what then should we do to ensure that Africa does not lag behind when it comes to agricultural policy? So over to you, Nancy. Please take over.
Thank you very much, Patricia, and it is good to see you virtually though, but you look great, and I think, I don't know if you're in Nigeria or Uganda.
Yes, I am. I am in Ibadan, and just to give you a little bit of, I see online we have 22 people. So welcome to our 22 participants who are joining us on Zoom, and the rest who are joining us on Facebook.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you very much, and welcome viewers from far and wide. Thank you very much for making time to join us for this very interesting conversation. And as Patricia introduced us, we are from the African Agricultural Technology Foundation, AATF, and we are about smallholder farmers and getting technologies to them, technologies that will make a difference in their lives and have an impact in their general livelihoods. I will now take us into the discussion because this topic is very interesting, and Patricia has indicated to us that time is critical, and I know these gentlemen that we have today have a lot to share with us. But let me introduce them very, very briefly. The two gentlemen are actually very passionate about farmers and about getting technologies to farmers. And I say so because I have worked with them and I have interacted with them, and I see the way they do that. Now, Dr. Munyaradzi Jonga, he is our seed production manager at AATF, and we call him Munya in short. He is an agronomist and seed production specialist. He's got a lot of experience in agriculture and the seed sector especially, and a passion for seed sector development and management. Munya has experience in agricultural research and extension, and he has worked in the fertilizer, crop chemicals and seed industries for many years. He is a gazetted seed inspector, seed production and quality assurance manager, and at AATF, he leads the seed production docket and interfaces very directly and frequently with the value chain players along the seed production, commercialization, and uptake pathway. So he was the right person to have for this meeting or discussion. Munya, welcome.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm glad to be on this webinar.
You're welcome. And the next person is Dr. Daniel Kyallo Willy. We call him Willy. Some of us call him Daniel. He's got various descriptions and names internally at AATF. And he is an agricultural economist with over 15 years working with smallholder farmers. And Willy is very widely published in his area of work. And he has conducted a lot of research to support agricultural policy reforms in Africa, which is something he does at AATF always. He has done this in various areas from land policies, agro-input marketing, input subsidies, and wetland resource management. At AATF, Willy is responsible for implementing the TAT policy enabler programs aimed at creation of an enabling environment for efficient deployment of high-impact agricultural technologies. So viewers, as you can see, these two gentlemen have wide experience between them from research and development and the enabling environment aspect related to agricultural deployment, commercialization, and getting the farmer involved and interfacing with the products. So to kick off our discussion, I would just like to ask the two gentlemen to help us understand and describe what do we mean when we say technology adoption? And any of you can jump in at any time, any point, and before I forget, I forgot to say to our viewers, please use the chat area to speak with us. Post there your comments, your questions, and we will pick them up from there. Okay, so back to you, gentlemen. If you can help us understand what is technology adoption, and then how can we measure it? How can we say this technology is widely adopted?
Thank you very much, Nancy. I'm glad to be part of this important discussion, and thank you for your kind introduction. Quickly into your question, I think in simple terms, technology adoption can be looked at as the uptake and consistent use of technologies by our farmers. And that is very critical because as much as we have technologies, the impact of those technologies can only be felt if farmers receive them, implement them at their farms, and use them consistently for a long period of time. Part two of your question was, how do we measure technology adoption? At farm level, we can measure technology adoption by looking at whether or not a farmer is using a particular technology. And the second level is to what extent are they using that technology. For example, if we are talking about a new maize variety, the issue is to ask how many hectares has the farmer put under production of that variety. And that would be also a good measure of adoption. At regional level, you can think of how many farmers in a particular geographical area have adopted that technology, and that can be a measure of technology adoption at spatial scale. Thank you, Nancy.
Nancy, I can add a bit from what Daniel had said about adoption. I just wanted to bring in an angle from business, where when you have your product and there are repeat sales from that product, for that product, then you know you have got a good customer base and your business will be viable. And we have confidence that farmers are using that product. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So from both the business angle and from the product or farmer angle, we've got measures towards indicators of adoption. Thank you. So therefore, why would you think it is important, why is it important for us today to be discussing technology adoption on the continent? Of what significance is that discussion to our, let's say, development, technology development and commercialization aspects?
Nancy, I think I need to point out that maybe on the African continent, we have been behind in terms of technologies. So currently there is good developments and catch up happening in terms of developing the new technologies or products to address some challenges that we face or some requirements that we have in the agriculture sector. So now we are at a point where there are a number of technologies, maybe some are on the shelf, some are in the pipeline, and we need them to be adopted so that they can have impact at farmer level. So it's a good time to discuss how that adoption can take place.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
If I may come in, if I may come in, just to add to what Jonga mentioned, I think this moment in time, Africa is gearing towards achieving economic development. We know that most of our countries have lagged behind in the wheel of development. And we all know that most of our people are engaged in farming. Close to 200 million farmers in Africa are engaged in agriculture. And definitely we know that utilizing agriculture as a tool for development is our priority. But we have to think of what is this silver bullet can help to improve our agricultural productivity. And the answer is not far from technology. And therefore, for us to achieve economic development, we need to enhance productivity in our farming systems. And for that to happen, we need to adopt appropriate technologies. And that's why the discussion as to how we need to fasten the process of technology adoption is a very critical discussion at this point in time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You've made it very clear. This is a critical topic at this particular time to move what is in the pipeline, what is in research, and to also help with the economic development agenda. Therefore, to that point, what would you see as the right technology portfolio, therefore, that can lend itself easily to adoption by farmers and people in the value chain in order to enable this faster adoption?
Nancy, maybe I can start maybe talking about from the angle of the product or technologies that could be a part of the portfolio leading into adoption. Farmers face a number of challenges when they do their production on farm level. So if we have products that can provide solutions to some of those challenges or risks associated with farming, like if we look at pests and diseases, and if we look at productivity issues, is there good genetic gain so that their yields can improve? We also look at whether the products can fit the purposes or farmer preferences that can address some of the issues with even their livelihoods, nutrition aspects, and so on, and even things that fit in the value chain for agro-processing. And we also need to look at a portfolio where some of the technologies or products can help to make the farming operations easier. Maybe a portfolio that involve products that are amenable to mechanization and even digital solutions, so that farming can be attractive and maybe reduce costs and also less riskier. So I can say maybe from that angle that comprise the portfolio that we can look at. But I think Daniel can also add on to that.
Yeah, well put, Jonga. I think you are on spot. And what I can just add there that in that portfolio, we also need technologies that address specific needs of specific people in the society. For instance, we know gender groups have specific needs and requirements, and therefore technology should address those specific needs. If you think of the youth, for example, they also need technologies that are able to address their special requirements, and that's also very important.
Thank you very much, colleagues. From here, I hear, on the one hand, technologies to solve problems, but also technologies to build our lives and technologies to meet different needs that we may have from different quarters. Excuse my trying to summarize that, but that is what I'm hearing, and I can see we are getting questions from our audience. I'll hold on that a little bit for longer, then we can go on a little bit. So therefore, in summary, if you get this technology portfolio right, and you've got these products and technologies available and ready, what are the factors that would drive adoption of those technologies?
Thank you, Nancy. That's a very important question because over the years, we've been doing research on technology adoption, trying to understand the process of technology adoption, what would drive farmers to adopt a technology or to reject it altogether, even when the technology is very beneficial. And I will just summarize into, all the factors that have come up as key drivers of technology into two. On one hand, we have factors that are inherent with the farmer. For example, farmer attributes, their age, their gender, their education level, and even their risk behavior. We know that technologies, once they are introduced in the society, there are people who take them very quickly. There are people who would delay in taking up, and that is attributable to their risk behavior and, of course, the adoption behavior. And therefore, those inherent farmer attributes are very critical because they would determine or rather differentiate between those who would take up the technology and those who will not take up the technology. We are also thinking of socio-cultural settings and so on and so on. On the other hand, we have factors that are beyond the reach of the farmer, in the sense that the farmers can do very little to influence them. And here I'm talking about issues like the policy and enabling environment within which farmers are accessing and using these technologies. And that enabling environment is very critical because it would determine, one, how easy is it for the farmers to access these technologies? How easy is it for the farmers to access the markets where these technologies are being sold? How easy are farmers able to access supporting services such as extension services, also accessing agricultural credit at cheaper rates, and also accessing strategies that help them to deal with agricultural risk. So the policy environment is very critical because it can be a deal breaker in terms of whether farmers adopt technologies or they don't. And therefore, those are very critical drivers of agricultural technology adoption.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add, Munya, to that?
Not at this point, Nancy. It's fine.
Okay. I have a question from Mark Edge. Mark Edge works with Bayer. And if I can see, if you can just move up the screen now for me. Okay, Mark Edge is asking, it is related to this question that I asked. Do farmers in Africa understand what technologies are good for them? I think you've talked about that. And if they're not aware of technologies that are good for them, what is the best way of increasing that awareness? Please pack this question because you'll cover it later. I'll ask you something similar. And if they're aware, what are the main barriers holding them back from adopting those technologies? Also hold that question, pack it somewhere, and I'll come back to you as I follow up with another question here. So therefore, and maybe I'm adding on to Mark Edge's question, is you've talked about the farmer or the user as critical to driving adoption. You've also referred to the environment within which the farmer is operating. So how do you think the issue of farmer psychology, the psychology of change, that's what I call it, how does that come in? Does it impact in any way the issue of adoption?
I can come in and there. I think, yes, there is a lot of psychology involved in the adoption, especially when we're talking about smallholder farmers. When they try to make a decision to move to a new product, at times it takes time for them because of the risk that are associated with agricultural seasons and so on. For them, if they move to something new, they think if they make a mistake and it's not the right product or technology for them, in terms of recovery, they have to wait for another season. In other environments, it means waiting for another year. So for them, when they are doing their agricultural activities, they take time to move or to perceive these benefits of this new technology. That's why you find we try by creating awareness and try to introduce those products. And at times they start by seeing them maybe in demonstrations, and seeing is believing, so to speak. And maybe they try to take a small part of that product and test it in somewhere, a corner in one season, and observe it and see whether it fits their ecology or their farming systems. And when then they see that it's fitting their farming systems, then maybe they can come back and try to buy more of that product and maybe change completely in their farming systems or their product offering because of that. But there are also some other farmer categories like commercial farmers who maybe presentation of data, they can quickly perceive the benefits and they can move on faster with that new product. But smallholder farmers, they tend to weigh a bit of risk on it and try a small part of it, then change over time. So, but by so doing, that can delay the way they take up products. But you see also in that same farming communities, you might find that there are people, some call lead farmers, champion farmers. There are some of those that can also quickly take on new products. And you find others who then follow when they see their champion farmers are using these products and they are successful, so they follow. But all those are some dynamics that we meet with in the various farming systems that we deal with.
Thank you, Munya. So that sounds like better the devil I know kind of scenario, and once bitten, twice shy. So has a lot to do with what we've been asked here by our viewers on the issue of awareness and education, and what you've touched on, Willy, on the issue aspects of the users have a lot of influence on the adoption process. So let me just shift to another question just to ask you, from your experience, because both of you are experienced in this area, how long does it generally take for a new good technology or product to, one, enter the market, and then two, to actually be fully adopted?
Thank you, Nats. Maybe when we look at the new products, maybe we look at maybe two stages to it. The other one, if I take maybe crops, when you're looking at maybe a new variety of a crop, you need to, there's the process of trying to register it or release it officially to be registered in a country, to be a product, maybe entered in a national catalog. That involves some testing. You're working with the regulators and so on. And those various processes of testing until you release a variety, they depend with the various systems in Africa, where you find some are advanced a bit, and some are still have some challenges, and that can affect the time that to take from variety development to when it's officially released. But you would find generally that at times some of the seed systems are constrained and it might take time. But if I quickly switch on to say, when then the variety is officially registered or released in a country, then you are introducing that product onto the market. Then we have seen that maybe those processes for that product to be fully adopted, it might take even 5 years, because you start by introducing, creating awareness that we're talking about, and having our customers trying those things on a smaller way before they finally agree to use them consistently, as Daniel said earlier on when we started. And but also we can include something in the mix there. If it's a seed product, for example, we need also to be able to produce it, so that when we promote it and create awareness, farmers would then come and find it on the market in good quantity. So the production processes also will be included there. And in terms of, it depends on the capacities of people who are marketing that product, that can they quickly ramp up production and have good quantities on the market for farmers to use. So maybe I can talk of maybe from the introduction to when it can peak in terms of adoption, it can take 5 years. But also here I need to put a rider, even the resources that we have in terms of promotion can also determine the time that the product can be fully adopted.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Jonga, you are very right. I just want to come in here just to add my voice on this important question. And as to whether we can place one time period across the continent on when it takes to move the product all the way to adoption, I think that period varies depending on the country and depending on many factors in that country. For example, the seed law, the regulations that govern the process of variety release, testing, and registration, as well as the process of registering other technology. For example, the process of registering tractors in a particular country, and so on and so on. But what I can point out here is that on average, the time period that many technologies take to move all the way to reach farmers is long. And that is definitely not acceptable. Things could be better. What we've been doing at AATF, in the third policy project that I work for, we've been trying to contribute to the process of shortening this time period through encouraging establishment of policies, regulations, guidelines that can help us to fast track the process of pushing technologies from research all the way to farmers. Just two quick examples is that we've been working towards facilitating establishment of seed systems, trying to help build systems for faster variety testing and releasing, building capacity on variety inspection, and so on and so on, because all those contribute towards ensuring that technologies reach farmers faster. The other thing we've been doing is that we've been supporting the domestication and implementation of regionally harmonized regulations. The reason why this is important is that if we have technologies that can work across agroecological zones, we are much aware that agroecological zones don't follow the natural, or rather the geographical boundaries that we know. So if you harmonize regulations across a region, that means a technology that can work across 1, 2, 3, or 4 countries can move faster than if each country goes through the whole scale of testing that technology, registering the technology, and even pushing it to the market. And therefore, through those initiatives, we are hoping that we can be able to shorten the time period within which technologies can reach farmers. Because we don't have the luxury of time, we need technologies to reach farmers as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, Willy, for adding that. It is very clear that for adoption to be meaningful, or for it to be achieved meaningfully, the product or technology needs to have been sustained in the market for a while for it to really get in there. And as you and Munya have indicated, there is a difference between market entry. We could fasten that process, but there's a deeper process after that on market on the product adoption that takes a little longer and requires something else that would be a little different. So I don't know if you can talk about what is needed in order to sustain a new technology or a new product in the market long enough for it to actually attain this desired adoption, which you earlier indicated is important or critical to achieving the economic growth that Africa desires.
Yeah, Nancy, I think it's that's a good question for how can we sustain the product on the market. And if you look at, there are some products that maybe are quite old, but they are still holding on to the market and maybe serving the purpose. So you also, there we look at the attributes of the products that we are talking about. If a product is still serving the purpose and being preferred and also solving the challenges that are faced by farmers, it can sustain long in the market. But you can also find some things that can come and like, for example, a new pest can destabilize that, and quickly you end up with a new product that moves very fast onto the market because it's solving a very specific need, like, for example, the fall armworm that we are currently experiencing in the maize industry. If you have a product, it can be introduced and pick and be adopted very fast because it's addressing that topical pest in the market. So the product preferences, if it meets the purpose, then you can sustain that. There's also, maybe we can talk of capacity issues. If it's a product or technology, we need a capacity to produce the quantities that are required so that customers can enjoy that product. You don't want where you want a product and you come one season is not there. So production capacity is very important in whatever product that you are dealing with so that it's there in the market. I can also talk about when we talk of product quantity, we have to tie it also to quality, where if the quality of that product is not satisfactory, that can kill the product. It can pick one time, but because of poor quality, then it doesn't serve the purpose, then people can drop it. So you need to also to make sure you put an eye on the quality of that product and right quantities. And maybe I can also talk about the value chain approach, where the product is there, and maybe you can look at the farmer level. It's happening. It's helping the productivity. But also you want to look at the other utilities by value chain actors. Say you are looking at millers or people who want it to produce starch and so on. When that product is meeting those requirements, then if there are off-takers and market preferences, then it can sustain long because there will be a pull on it for sustained use. I think Daniel can add it to the list there.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, if you can summarize, we need now to be moving closer to the end of the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much. And before I come in on that aspect, I think there are two questions, very good questions from one of our participants, Goodman, and they are linked to my earlier discussion, so it's better just quickly respond to them. You're asking whether there are any strategies towards approval of products in the at regional level. And yes, within the East African community, we've been working towards harmonizing guidelines for registration of pesticides. And that is both conventional and biopesticides. And that has already been approved, and therefore that is already successful. In COMESA, there are guidelines towards harmonizing registration and testing of seed varieties, as well as in ECOWAS. And also to your question as to whether there is any specific technology that has been deployed to deal with a specific issue, yes, at AATF, we have developed the drought tego varieties through our water efficient Maize for Africa project. And this was a very successful initiative because within 3 years, we saw over 26% adoption of the varieties, and the numbers are still growing, and therefore that is a specific example. And now quickly to the question that Nancy, you had asked as to how to sustain the technologies in the market. I'll quickly bring out 3 aspects. The first one is that what we have learned over the years is that it's very important to use the value chain approach. As you develop a technology, you need to think through the entire value chain and try to deal with any issues that might come along the way, so that when the technology is ready for the farmer, it is also ready for the market, and it will be acceptable in the market. Number 2, what we have learned also is that the private sector is very critical. Gone are the days when technology development and deployment was a preserve of the government. We need to involve the private sector very early in the process, because successful deployment of technologies and successful adoption will depend to what extent is the private sector involved in taking up the technologies, commercializing them, seeing a business sense in the technologies, and that is how they'll be able to move faster to farmers. Last and very important is the issue of stewardship. We know that every technology needs to be used in a particular responsible way and to create the economic benefits associated with the technology. And therefore, if it is not used as per the stewardship plan, definitely it will fail. And if it fails, it becomes a discouragement to the farmers, and that will be an ingredient for farmers to reject it and fail to adopt it. And therefore, those are three critical points that can help to sustain these technologies in the market.
Excellent.
Thank you,
excellent. Are you, do we have 5 minutes?
Yes.
That's what we are saying, or 5 minutes?
Let me not rush us, because I see we have quite a bit of interest, a number of questions and comments. Let us go on until the end of the hour. So do not be rushed.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Nancy, there was someone who raised their hand. Maybe they joined after we had started. Please don't raise your hand. If you want to say something, type out your question or comment in the chat section. Nancy and the other panelists will be able to see it and address you.
Thank you, Patricia. We may not need the full time, maybe, but the interest is growing, so we'll use that. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much, gentlemen. You have summarized this huge area of interest very, very well on how to sustain a new technology or product in the market in order for it to actually drive or lend itself to adoption. And I'm seeing you've summarized it into 2 areas. One is the technology or product specific area of interest that Munya spoke about. That is the product farmer preferences, new problem solvers, etc. And Willy, you've come in to indicate issues related to the enabling, the environment itself. So therefore, or the operational aspect of it, private sector involvement, stewardship, value chain actors involvement, and all that, which is excellent. And therefore, I want to ask you, having said all that, what is it, therefore, that we have to do? What needs to be done? What do we as a continent, what do we as players in this field need to attend to in order to move adoption of technologies forward? Agricultural technologies.
I'll start, Nancy, and say maybe having developed blockbuster products and they are there, we need to say to now create awareness to make sure that the farmers can perceive and realize the benefits from those blockbuster products. And when I say blockbuster products, I'm referring to products that can address the challenges, can improve our livelihoods, can solve the challenges that we are facing. So assuming we now have those blockbuster products, then we need the awareness, we need the robust awareness packages or creation. And I've seen that maybe we talk of doing it, but I think we are not doing it enough, using considering the diverse farming systems that we have, and the farmers that are in those categories. So we need to create that awareness so that farmers can see the benefits and adopt those technologies. We go back again to this value chain approach where we need to be able to be involving a lot of players in it so that the utilities from that product is not just at one level, Maybe I talk of blockbuster at the farmer level to address diseases and so on, but is it addressing other things that, or other actors in the value chain? So we need that to be involving them, maybe even at product or development stage, so that it can also meet the requirements of the other value chain actors. So, you know, if we do that and maybe do it more and be robust, then maybe we can improve adoption. But I've seen also maybe a question where there are various players that are supposed to promote products so that they are adopted. But also the capacity to do that varies. Maybe if you take seed industry, you might find that there are various players. There are some who've got capacity to do this robust awareness creation, but some they don't have that capacity. So it can take time maybe for such products or people or players who don't have the capacity to promote those products or technologies. Then that might need also to think of how can we help such partners, or nationally, how can we help to promote such packages if maybe at the national level, when we think that technology can help the nation go forward. I end there, and maybe Daniel can add.
Maybe Daniel, before you step in, you can also try and see if you can figure out, you can advise what is the issue? What is the issue that therefore we need to resolve in order to push this agenda forward?
All right. Thank you, Nancy. And let me start by that pointer of what is the issue. I will point out 3 key issues that we have that maybe we need to deal with as we move forward towards fastening the process of technology adoption in African agriculture. Number 1, and very critical, and I think we mentioned that before, and it's important to repeat this, the processes are too long, and these are caused by lack of the right regulations or regulations that are prohibiting, and that cause, you know, they become impediments to the process of releasing and registration of varieties. That is number 1. Number 2, we have a very big elephant in the room with regards to the presence of people who bring counterfeit inputs in the market. And Africa, by and large, lacks very efficient systems to first establish, okay, we have the regulation, the standards, but enforcing the standards is a challenge in there. And therefore, the moment you have the possibilities for counterfeit inputs to penetrate the market, then they boil down, or rather they diffuse the critical important attributes that are associated with the technologies. And therefore, if we can deal with that issue, I think that can be a very important thing. Number 3, for all these things to happen, for us to have sufficient systems and capacity to enforce all these standards, we need sufficient public sector investment in agriculture, and that can be able to support that. So those 3 things are very important, and therefore, if we want to make the process much faster, I think those can help us really to move that forward. And I think, Rob, I agree with your comments here. Yeah, we're asking how authorities can better deal with the counterfeit seeds that will not give desired traits. I'll just give 2 examples on how we have been working with some partners towards encouraging this. One is the use of digital tools to ensure quality in the market. For example, if you buy seed, there can be a possibility of you scratching a number, sending to a particular number, and you get a response whether this seed is authentic or not. So that is a good way through which some of the countries in the region have adopted digital tools to ensure that they ensure quality in the market. The other thing that we've been doing is trying to do establish a listing of authentic agro-input dealers and putting them in a catalog so that you can be able to know, if you're in a particular country, you can be able to know who are the accredited agro-input dealers. And therefore, you can, when you buy inputs from such dealers, you know for sure these inputs are quality and they are not likely to be counterfeit. Yeah, so those are very, very critical.
Thank you very much, Willy.
Nancy?
Thank you. Thank you, Willy. I would like to take one or two questions from the audience, from our viewers. Rob Wedger is asking, how can farmers be better at communicating their desires for the technology to policymakers? If you've got some comment or advice on that, that would help.
Yeah, let me start and maybe Jonga can come in. Roger, thank you. That's a very important question because the voices of the farmers should be heard by the policymakers so that the policies that are being made are addressing the needs of the farmers. And one critical thing that needs to be done, and that has been an impediment in many of our African countries, is the issue of coordination. You know, if farmers are speaking at individual level, there's no way their voices can be heard. But if they are better coordinated, they are better organized into farmers groups, then through those organizations, they can be able to champion for their needs in, among the policymakers, and therefore that can be an efficient way of passing the communication. Maybe Jonga can add.
I think you've covered it all. Just maybe to mention that maybe in their groupings and so on with their leaders of their groups, or in even as a group, they can do participatory involvement. You can involve farmers so that they can give feedback on their requirements or preferences. And I've known that some organizations do it very well. They've got a very good feedback mechanism that they encourage farmers to give feedback on what they prefer, and that information is captured and can be fed into the R&D so that products that address what farmers require can be made available.
Thank you. Maybe I can add one or 2 points. I know I'm moderating, maybe not supposed to be talking too much, Rob. At AATF, we have a program called the Open Forum on Agricultural Biotechnology that actually works with farmers and helping farmers to move their voices to policymakers so that policymakers can hear what farmers are saying about some of the technologies that are very innovative and new, and maybe policymakers may be hesitant towards acting on it. So maybe we can give you a little bit more information on that. Thank you, colleagues. Others, I can see here we've got comments. Some questions have been answered. How governments can support technology adoption, that has been answered. I can see a comment here from Sylvester Oike, who manages the TELA project across Africa. He say a good example of early adoption was the drought tego maize. I think the drought tego maize deployment that was adopted, 26% early adoption within 3 years only, 26%. So I think, Munya, this actually really fits perfectly in your 5-year. So maybe from 26 in 5 years, you may move a little faster. How can we solve the challenge of farmer access to technologies? This is a question from Joanne. Maybe you want to talk about that, colleagues, and maybe specifically, you may have this very good product. It has entered the market. Munya, you spoke about producing enough seed in order to make that available. Maybe in a very short, maybe just a few seconds, don't use a lot of time, or Patricia will throw us out of the studio, just to respond to that question.
Yeah, Nancy, the question of access could be looked at from different ways. When a product is there, as we talked about, do we have capacity to produce it consistently at a good quality and supply in good required quantities? If that is available, then farmers can have access. But we also look at the other side. When you look at smallholder farmers, maybe even when the product is there in good quantity and good quality, there could be, is there effective demand or resources to purchase it? So I would want maybe to take this approach from where you have produced it and good quality and it is there. So we need to build our capacities to make sure that we can produce the variety in the right quantities and quality and put it where it is, place it where farmers can buy it and use on their farms.
Thank you very much. May I ask, you wanted to add something, Willy? Sorry.
Yeah, I think Jonga has done justice to that question. Maybe just to add, I think we also need to have not just technologies that fit the preference of the farmers, but also technologies that produce products that are acceptable in the market. Because if they are not, then farmers will deal with the supply side aspects, but we also need to think through the demand side aspect. So all the technologies have to be acceptable in the market. And we're not just talking about seed-based technologies. We're even talking about agricultural mechanization technologies. We are talking about digital tools that are required by farmers. And we are talking about any other technology that can help farmers to do their work better. It has to think through the two components, the supply side and the demand side aspects. Yeah.
Excellent. And the demand side relies on awareness, education, and all that in order to build that and bring the two together. I have an interesting question here from Kyallo Willy. How can we, and Willy, you spoke about bringing the private sector into play because they're critical. How can we therefore encourage seed companies to support farmers adopt superior seed varieties rather than just using old varieties that may be inferior to the new ones? Kyallo, are you able to comment on that, Willy?
Yeah, I can comment that. You know, the private sector is driven by profits, just to be blunt. And therefore, for the technology to make sense to the company, they must see the business sense. And for them to support farmers towards adopting that technology, again, there has to be substantial numbers. And therefore, as we think through the process of developing the technology, and as I mentioned previously, we involve the private sector way in advance, then they'll be able to bring in their interests. And therefore, when the product lands in the market, then the private sector will not need a lot of calling for buy-in. They will already be in the process. But maybe Jonga can add to that.
Maybe we end with that because I need to close. Okay. Maybe let me invite you, very short comments on closing remarks. Maybe 1 or 2 seconds each.
Nancy, before you close, I would request that we address Moses's question. Is there a harmonization? I think it's the very last question.
Are there a regulatory harmonization for an ongoing initiative on genetic modified? Is there regulatory harmonization or an ongoing initiative on GM genetically modified crops through AATF? Willy, you want to take that? It's about harmonization of regulations for GMOs.
Yeah, thank you, Moses, for your question. Our work around supporting harmonization of regulations has been mainly on conventional products, seeds, and pesticides, and so on and so on. And with regard to genetic modified crops, I think at the moment, every country is using their own regulations, and therefore it will be a good thing to move in the future towards harmonizing of that. But as at now, I think there are no ongoing initiatives around that area.
Maybe I can add something there for you, Moses. The issue of regulations for GMOs is a very sensitive aspect right now. Most countries are still looking inwards and charting their own ways internally. However, RECs like regional economic community bodies like COMESA are looking at a way of slowly entering that area. And so that is why Willy is indicating this is still not very, very clear. Although I can see Francis Nangayo has presented a response also here. Harmonization of GM regulations is well underway. We've just started. COMESA is ahead of ECOWAS. So it is still being molded. It's still being molded because of the sensitivity. There is a quick question from Rob that maybe you want to respond to. Where does public-private partnerships fit into the discussion on adoption? And my guess here is that is looking at, public sector is involved in product development. You've got private sector on this other side. Where does that fit in the discussion?
Maybe Nancy, I would address one part of it and also combining another question.
If I may come in.
Sorry,
I think, as I mentioned before, the process of development and deployment of technologies. Yes.
It's okay. Continue.
I had lost you or something.
Yeah, will you continue?
Okay, Nancy.
Continue, Daniel.
Yeah. Thank you. What I was saying is that what we know and what we know works is that public-private partnerships work very well. And they are very important in terms of supporting technology development and deployment, and they can be very critical for adoption. And therefore, we know that the government can play a very critical role of creating and facilitating environment, conducive environment, and the private sector can come in to bring the business sense, which can sustain technologies in the market. Thank you.
Thank you. Munya, you wanted to add?
I can add to that. It's also related to a question that I saw on the wall, where someone asked the role of extension in technology adoption. So I would want to say that, most of the technologies or products, we call them, they are technical products, and they require a lot of stewardship for them to when you create awareness and when you want to share the benefits with farmers, and you want to be you want them to be used properly, and extension plays a role there, a very critical role to make sure that those things are sustained in the market when they are adopted.
Thank you. We need to wrap up. Is that okay now, Patricia? I think we can wrap up now. And Moses, thank you very much. Yes, we can collaborate. We'll reach out to you. So last remarks from you, gentlemen.
Nancy, I would say my last remark would now say, in Africa, I think we now have a number of technologies or products that have been developed that can solve our problems if we adopt them. So I think the critical thing that is needed now is to move this journey of adoption of new technologies so that we can use them effectively to benefit us. I end there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Willy?
Yeah, thank you very much to our partners, AfS, for this opportunity. And I think it's a very important question. My parting shot is that, yes, we have many technologies that can solve the problems that our farmers are facing. The only thing we don't have is time. And therefore, we need to do all that it takes to make sure that these technologies reach our farmers as fast as they can. I believe it is possible. And I believe through technology, Africa can feed itself in this generation. We don't have to wait for another generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't think I need to add anything to your closing remarks, except to appreciate the AFS for giving us this platform, for inviting us for this discussion, and to recognize all the viewers and to say thank you very much for your comments and for your participation. And I believe, Patricia, I can hand over to you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Nancy, Munya, and Daniel, for a very informative discussion. Our participants on Zoom and Facebook. This has been Alliance for Science Live every Thursday, same time. Please join us. If you have any any issue that you would like to discuss. I saw someone asking about mycotoxins. Please send me an email on PN25. 25 is the country code for Kenya, in case you forget. So pn25@cornell.edu, and suggest any issue that you would like us to discuss. Thank you very much again, our friends from AATF, and have a good evening.
Thank you, and you too.
Sure.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.